I've spent last 3 months obsessing over lighting in rendering and photography, and today I will show you the perfect lighting setup I have developed. Lighting is hard to get right, but I will share with you my extremely effective, yet simple and beginner-friendly system to get it right every time. This setup will make your LEGO models look realistic and help you avoid common mistakes. Lighting, like art, is subjective, and there is no single correct way to do it. But if you don't have the time to learn and master all of the principles for just quick few renders, this video is perfect for you. To achieve good lighting, we actually need to use just 2 lights, and it's really simple, so stick to the end of this video because I will show you how to master them and get those beautiful renders. Okay, let's dive in. The first light we need is the main light. It has to be big and strong to illuminate the whole scene. It should be positioned somewhat in the 30° to 90° range on the side of the model. I like to put it at 90 degrees because it doesn't create super visible and big highlights. The next thing is the size of the main light. It should be big and around 5 to 7 times bigger than your model. If you think the shadows are too harsh, you can increase the size of the light even more. But the position and size of the light is just the beginning, and the thing that is responsible for the perfect lighting is actually something else. The other super important thing is the intensity, but as you probably know, it isn't as simple as just setting a random high number. It has to be the perfect amount of light. I have found the way that the pros go about it, and I will show you this advanced method in a second. So here is the system for the perfect intensity. First, you set the light to a number that you think will be enough to illuminate the model. Then you go to the rendering tab on the top and open the color management menu in the render properties tab. The default option should be AGX. Change the AGX to false colors and you will see a lot of different colors that represents the intensities of lights that are visible on the image. The brown color is the one in the middle, and warmer colors are more light and cold colors are less light. Ideally, you want it to be so there are only some parts that are orange and only some parts that are dark blue. The biggest part of the image should be green or yellow. Under the drop-down menu, you have the exposure slider. You need to adjust it so it looks like I just described, with only a bit of orange. Then check how much you added, like +1, and remember it. Switch back to the AGX and see how it looks. If it's great, set the exposure back to 0 and go back to the normal view and adjust the intensity a bit. As a guideline, you can use a rough scale where 1 point on the exposure slider means the brightness has increased 2 times, similar to doubling the intensity of a light. Then go again to false color and check how is it now. Do this until you get the same effect as on increased exposure, but with the exposure set to 0. Now we have the main light set, but it's all useless without the second light, so stay to the end of the video to see how it all comes together. The main light illuminates the whole scene, but the second light is as important because it makes the whole image look twice as pleasant by eliminating overly visible shadows and illuminating the dark parts of the model, allowing you to see all of the model's details. First step in setting up the fill light is to duplicate the main light and put it on the other side of the model. If the first light is at a 45° angle, the fill light should be 2, but on the other side. If it's on 90, it should be at 90. Now comes the most important part of the light setup, the intensity of the fill light. It can break the whole image or make it look hyper-realistic, so be careful while setting it up. First, as the start position, put the duplicated light twice as far from the model as the first. Now you can do a test render to see how it looks. It probably will be too bright, so we need to move it farther back. But be careful because now the strength will start to drop really fast because of the inverse square law. The best position is typically around 3 times farther, but you need to really experiment with this. Now the light should be right, but you can still play with the false color and distance to get it right. In most cases, you probably want the fill light to be a bit lighter than no light, just making the dark details a bit more visible. You want the fill light to be a couple times lighter than the main light, and just like that, you have a really good lighting setup done. But there is one more technique to spice it up if you don't feel fully happy with the results. The thing is to add a highlight on the back of the model to make it a bit more interesting. We do it by adding a really weak lamp behind the model and also experimenting with it to get it just subtle enough to see, but not distracting, and to complement the model. I personally use the 2 light setup because I think it's enough, and I would also advise you to master the 2 light first before moving to the free lights. Also, one quick tip: if you find that the background has a very visible gradient and you don't like it, you should move the light back using the inverse square law and then increase the size and the intensity again to be the same brightness. And this will resolve this problem. And just like that, you have learned the most basic and popular lighting setup in photography, also known as 3-point lighting. It is the best setup, and to get it right, it took me a couple of projects, but it was worth it. It isn't as simple as just putting 3 lights around the model and calling it a day. The tricky part is getting the intensity right. But there is one more thing without which you will never unlock the true potential of your renders. And this whole tutorial would be much less effective. To find out what you are missing out, click on the video on the screen right now.